So if you're like me, you have more hobbies other than just hi-fi audio. My other passion is photography. And over the last year or 2 years, as I've done videos on high-end audio gear, that has grown into cinematography as I look to ramp up the quality of my videos and frankly, the storytelling. First and foremost, I'm going to link down below to my video on the purchase of this lens. And this really helped start my journey. I purchased this through Hot Rod Camera. I'll also give you their information down below. And guys, they were fantastic. In fact, I had already previously bought a Sony FX3. I wanted to then get into a real cinematography lens. I tried a bunch I didn't like through other retailers. I got, frankly, crappy service. So I reached out to them and they could not have treated me better. This is not sponsored by them. They have not paid me to say this. This is my own personal journey. And one of the best things that they gave me in terms of advice was not to go with the Sony E mount, instead to go with the PL mount for a couple of reasons. First, there's more lens available, a variety of lenses than the Sony E mount. There is, from a resale point of view, if I ever outgrew this and wanted to sell it, it would be easier to sell. And if I ever changed camera brands, I could always buy a different adapter. And at the time I thought, well, I'm never changing camera brands, but the first two made sense. So I followed their advice and I got the PL one. I love this lens. Now, here's the second point I want to cover. This little dongle has screwed me up. Goes to show you I'm not nearly as good as this as I thought I was, because I'm about to show you the camera, so I can't use the camera to record. So I'm using my iPhone, and I usually have an external microphone for the iPhone, but I forgot that the iPhone changed to a USB-C connector this year, so my lightning adapter to plug into the microphone doesn't work. So I have to order one of these. So you are going to be listening to me on the built-in microphone along with some audio editing in Final Cut Pro. But from a high audio point of view, this is the type of stuff I usually deal with. Power cables like this for high-end audio. This one is $11,000. We deal with, speakers $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. We deal with amplifiers that are $20,000 and $30,000. That's my passion. So I'm kind of a geeky nerd when it comes to stuff like that. That has led me to this. This is the Sony C70, and it looks a little different than stock configuration. I've got a mount here that I use for my really right stuff mounts on my different tripods. And it currently has a hot rod adapter, which changes it from the Sony mount to the PL mount. And I'm going to do a separate video on this. In fact, we've got a whole line of videos coming up. We're going to be talking about gear, stands, with rollers, without rollers, arms, microphones, mounts, you name it. We're going to be doing a variety of videos. But the first couple I want to talk about is my journey from the Sony FX3 to the C70 and why I made it. I am an OCD research fanatic, and I spent hours and hours and hours researching what camera was right for me. And also I didn't want to spend too much money because I thought anything was going to be a step up from my compact Sony A7, A7C. And from there, I liked Sony. I thought it was good. They were very sharp pictures. So I stayed within the line. I had a couple of lenses and I got the FX3. The FX3 is a very good camera. It was easier to use than a traditional DSLR. I liked it, but the more I used it, the more I realized it wasn't the right camera for me. And I needed to go through the journey of trying a camera that wasn't right for me to know what I really needed to find the camera that was right for me. Now, having said that, another regret of mine is if I had bought the camera through Hot Rod Camera, the way they helped steer me right on the lens, when I would have told them what all my priorities were and what I was trying to do with it, there's no doubt in my mind they would have steered me right off the bat to the C70, and I would have saved money because I wouldn't have bought a camera and lenses and then sold them and then have to buy something different because you end up losing money for that. So I'm a big fan of buy once, cry once. But what do I like about the C70? And I'm actually going to do this in several different videos because I made a list of like 20 or different things that I like on the C70 over the FX3. But let me just talk a couple of high level ones first. First, this to me is a much more ergonomically easy to use, ergonomically sound camera. I was surprised at the fact that my recording time of doing my videos for the high-end audio was literally cut in half. I found that everything was easier to use. There's buttons, that's well laid out. It's a little bit bigger screen. I just found everything on it much more easy to use. The ergonomics are very good. This is a heavy camera. But the big one for me, and I'll tell you what really was the tipping point for me, was I realized that I wanted to shoot in RAW. And Sony, if you add an Atomos Ninja, you can shoot in Pro RAW. So I bought an Atomos Ninja, I bought the batteries, and on the 35th day, it broke. I tried to deal with Atomos. They were extremely difficult. They tried to tell me to send it back to the place I bought it from. The place I bought it from, not Hot Rod Camera, said, no, you're 5 days out of the return period, deal with Atomos. So I went back and forth with that for a week or two. Then I sent it back. Then I was without it for several weeks, a month. Then they sent it back to me. They sent it back to me fixed. The day they sent it back to me fixed, I then plugged in an Atomos branded power adapter so I could plug it into the wall, not a third-party power adapter, and it broke. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I've now got cables. I've added to the weight of the Sony. The thing is getting tall. It's getting large. All this to record RAW, it didn't make sense to me. And when I realized I was adding, now a camera weighs as much as, that Sony's now weighing as much as the C70. It is making me spend more money on additional stuff that keeps breaking, that I'm having issues with. It just was not a usable experience. It got to the point where I didn't want to use it. And when I looked at the C70, it had caught my eye because I saw all these videos on why people went with the Sony FX3 over the C70. And so I reached out to Hot Rod and I said, guys, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. I'm looking at the C70. This is what I'm trying to do with it. And they were awesome. They were like, yep, that's a great camera. Look, do I wish I could have afforded a red Komodo? Absolutely. I mean, that's a dream camera of mine, but that's crazy expensive for me at this stage. This, by the time I added the stuff to this, it was about a third of the cost of the red by the time you add all the extra stuff to the red Komodo that you need. And this, from my understanding, for my workflow, is a better workflow for me. I also really wanted something that was the Sony to me. So this gave me the internal RAW, so I didn't need external monitors. I didn't need the Atomos stuff. I could get rid of all that, sell all that. But I also wanted something that was more cinematic in the way it looked. The Sony to me was overly sharp, overly digital. It was, so we talk about in audio, there is the analog sound, which is more the emotion, the flow of the music. And there's a more digital sound, which is more like start and stop, light switch on and off, crystal squeaky clean, but there's no real emotion to it. This to me gives me a much more analog-like look than the Sony. I'm not saying the Sony's bad. I'm saying that's not the look that I was going for. I have more fun with this. And this is just a detachable handle. So from a logistics point of view, I've now got a camera that's going to give me, for my eye, a better picture for more what I'm looking for. I got rid of the Atomos mount to have to record RAW and the headache of dealing with them and that product. I've got the internal capability of RAW. I've got a better preamp section for when I plug in my real microphones. I could just plug them right into there with the mini XLR, or if I wanted to, I could use a 1/8 inch input, but it's got two XLRs. It's got headphones. It's got everything I could want. And I don't want to go over too many of the features right now because I do want to break that out into other videos. But it's a whole different level of camera. It's a whole different shooting experience. I will also say that one other high-level feature that, in my mind, justified the cost over the Sony is it's got internal ND filters. So when you look at the Sony, if by the time you add ND filters, and you will need them, you absolutely will know. I'm thinking, oh, I'm shooting inside, I don't need them. Well, sometimes I do if the light's behind me here. By the time you add ND filters, by the time you add the Atomos, now you're dealing with two different types of batteries. You got to worry about them staying charged up. The Atomos eats batteries left and right. The quality issues I had with the Atomos, now you've got extra plugs, now you've got extra weight, you've got extra size. I'm at the price of a C70, and the C70 to my eye has the better picture, is much more usable, has got the features that I like. I will tell you, it's got much better battery life than the Sony. I will tell you, though, that the one thing where I do feel that the Sony was superior to the Canon, and this could be software fixed, I would think, is that I do nothing. All my lenses are manual lens. They're all cinematography lens. So I manually focus, and I love the red peaking. I use red peaking for me to adjust manual focus. I do feel that the manual focus red peaking on the Sony was or is superior than the Canon. So that is probably, in my mind, the biggest win for the Sony over the Canon. It's really the only win that I can think of, unless you really like, unless you don't need to shoot in RAW and you want something that's a much smaller compact factor. The colors on the Canon are more to my liking than the Sony. Again, it's a more analog cinematic type look. So I love this. I love this. I love this. I will say that, yes, I'm sure Hot Rod would have steered me in the right direction on the first time on this, like they did with the lens. I am so glad they told me to get the PL mount on this, because if I had bought this in an E-mount and then had to sell this and then had to try and buy this and then rebuy it, it would have just been a nightmare. So I am so glad they steered me right on that. And guys, the other thing is, I'm a small time YouTuber. I don't have $1 million budgets. And it seemed like a lot of the other cinematography places only wanted to deal with that. I did try and deal with some local places first. They didn't really want to give me the time of day if I wasn't big time. I did reach out to some more other internet ones. Same thing. Initially, they may respond if they did. If they didn't, it was never the level of service that I needed to help make the right decisions for what I was looking for. Because for me, this is big money. This may not be big money for you or for others, but for me, this is big money. And they treated me like I was $1 million customer. So I'm sure they probably would have steered me in the right direction to begin with. Having said that, I don't think I was prepared to hear it. I think I still probably would have gone with the Sony, because in my mind, logically, it was at the time the right choice. And I had to learn how it wasn't for me and my workflow and grow into something different, so that I could then realize that the Canon really was the right choice for me. So this is the first of several. I have several more coming out on the C70, the features, why I like it over the FX3. But if you're debating between the two, in my mind, there's no comparison. The Sony C70 is superior to it in virtually every way. If you have an FX3 and you're curious, I got to tell you, I would be surprised if you didn't fall in love with the Canon more. So definitely check it out. So stay tuned for the other ones, and please like and subscribe. What I did is I'm actually breaking off from my hi-fi channel and those reviews to starting this channel here. And if you're on my hi-fi channel, I'll link to the photography channel. But that way I can do a whole host of videos on this and the other gear and my cinematography journey that's more unique to the audience. So please subscribe. I hope we'll see you on the next one, and thanks for stopping by.